Okay, welcome everybody. It's a beautiful evening. If you happen, like Claudia, to have got into the sun, I won't be offended if you want to move if it's too bright. Oh, you've got a shoulder to rest on, that's always good. I hope everybody feels like that. I'm Jane Forrest Waghorn, and I have a double role in the book festival, from hanging around for a long time interviewing people and also as a sponsor, but I'm here in my capacity to talk to Rachael King, who I unashamedly am, I can't say a girl fan, a sort of an old woman fan of, and have followed her books. In fact, I realised I own them all.
Oh.
And
well, it's 10 years ago that we first spoke. Was it 10 years ago? Or was it no?
Yeah.
No, it was 2016, I think.
Yeah, we did Red Rocks, but I also did a panel with you and Charlotte Grimshaw.
Oh, yes. That's
which
right.
was about your fathers.
Yeah.
So for me, the whole opening...
Maybe that was 2016.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So the whakatoki for the festival opening, which was Ka Muri Ka Muri Ka Mua, seems terribly appropriate to be here, and especially with the topic of this book. Now, I said to Rachael, when I get nervous, I often mispronounce things. Rachael, I'm good with Rachael, okay? I've got that down pat, that's no problem at all. But it's Grimmelings, isn't it?
Grimmelings.
Grimmelings, see, I knew I'd do it wrong. Knew it, no matter how much I practiced. Okay, I'll just get rid of that little box. So we're here today to talk about this amazing book, and I'm not sure if you've all read it, which is great. I can see people nodding because I unashamedly give spoilers when we're doing these talks. It's inevitable, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's still a great read. And also, if like me, you have grandkids, it's also a great thing that you know about it before they do. It's always exciting. You'd go, oh yeah.
It's good to see there's some young people in the audience as well.
Yeah, that's great. Hello, Olive. So yes, it's really great to see them here. I thought that, I'm assuming you don't need any introduction to Rachael King, but perhaps we do.
I'm sure lots of people don't know who I am.
So this is Rachael King. And she is an author of some renown in the sense that she has written adult books and then more recently children's books. But she's also had a broader career in the fact that she was the kaiwhakahaere of Word, really, weren't you? And has recently had a change of career in the sense that she stepped away from that.
Yeah, kind of a reversion of career, really.
Yeah.
I mean, when my first book, Sound of Butterflies, came out, it did quite well in New Zealand, but also I had an agent, a UK agent, and who managed to sell it into 9 different languages as well.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, my dreams come true. I can make a living as a writer. This is awesome. And then when my second book came out, they were all like, no, we don't want it, sorry. And I was like, oh, okay. So I couldn't make a living as a full-time writer, as it turned out. But when I was in Christchurch for the earthquakes in 2011, and I just thought I want to make a difference in the city in kind of contributing to the rebuilding of morale and culture and everything. And so I joined the board of the Christchurch Writers' Festival, as it was at that time. And then that was 2011, and then after the 2012 festival, which was held in a dome in Hagley Park, because there were no venues, so the council had put up, we called it the Pleasure Dome. And then incredible Moran Rout and Ruth Todd, who were the program directors, they decided to step aside, and I just thought, actually, I could do that job. And it turned out it was kind of a perfect, all of my experiences through my 20s, which was working in media and selling advertising and getting sponsors for things and being a books editor and then also writing. It was like the perfect combination of all of those eclectic skills I'd picked out were really perfect for being the program director.
Where did
of a
the
writers'
bass
festival.
playing fit in?
Oh, actually, that did come into the festival because we kind of became known for having kind of cool alternative music in the festival. But also, because my background was in alternative bands, kind of Flying Nun. I worked for BFM, which was the alternative radio station. I worked for a popular culture magazine that was kind of thought of as being like the bratty kind of kids on the scene. That I did kind of brought all that ethos to the festival. I wanted to do like the festival equivalent of an alternative record label or radio station or something like that. So it was. I loved the job. It was so creatively fulfilling. It was challenging. Just every day was, how can I solve this problem? How can we do this? It was really good for my brain, which tends to kind of fire off in all directions. So I really loved it. But after a while, I realised that I took on the job as a part-time job because I thought, I can keep writing my books. And I did not write any books while I was there, partly because of the brain space thing was the main reason, really. I decided that it was time to step aside. And also I brought, on my last year, I brought Nick Lowe on board, who's here, I think, next year, as my co-program director, because I really loved the idea of having a Māori and Pākehā artistic direction in the festival and for us to, be side by side in what we were doing. And then it was kind of sneaky too, it was my succession plan too, because then I was going to leave and push Nick to the front. But then unfortunately he left a year later, so it's all under new management at the moment. But it was definitely the best job I've ever had in my life. It was amazing. And I got to invite some of my favourite writers to New Zealand and, drive them around and show them the sites. And I got to go to the Edinburgh Festival and the Cheltenham Festival and the Vancouver Festival and just make these incredible partnerships and relationships, which kind of helped word be out in the world, I suppose, and not just in Christchurch. But, yeah.
So that's an incredible contrast to going back to, I keep saying writing at your kitchen table, but it seems to me that often people do, but into a much more interior world of being a writer. So how's that seismic shift been?
It's been great, actually, because I'm actually an introvert, and being the program director of a festival, you have to do a lot of front-facing things. There's a lot of public speaking. There's a lot of just being out in the world, and so I've actually really enjoyed that kind of retreating back into myself, and also only being responsible for myself. A lot less pressure. It's been really wonderful, actually. I mean, people ask me if I miss it, and I jokingly go, no, immediately. But obviously I do miss aspects of it. But really, going back to writing is my first love. And so it was a really wonderful interlude doing the festival. But now I think I'm back where I should be.
Good. That's wonderful, and it's wonderful to have you here with this really terrific book. Warning, it's quite scary. One night I had to put it down, which is probably really great. I suppose I was introduced to your folklore stories through Red Rocks, which is set on the south coast of Wellington, and there's Selkies, which are beautiful. I find them fascinating creatures in themselves. But now we've moved on. Where did this story come from? How did it start?
The Grimmelings. So I was on a train going through the Highlands of Scotland. I was going from Orkney Islands to the Edinburgh Book Festival. And I looked out the window and I thought, gosh, the landscape's quite a lot like the South Island. Yeah. And then this idea just popped into my head, sometimes it happens, of a kelpie and of the water horse. And I thought, actually, I looked back at my notebook from that train journey the other day, and it says, girl meets a kelpie / community on edge.
Excellent. So that's a sum up the story.
Sums it up exactly.
Yes. Okay.
But yeah, and then I just started thinking about where would it be? I could be in the South Island. Who is this girl? At the time, I had rediscovered horse riding after I don't know, 35-year gap or something. And so I set it on a horse trekking farm because I was intimately, involved with that kind of world at the time. And so, then I just thought, okay, we've got our setting, we've got to go, what happens next? And, well, the boy goes missing because that's what Kelpies do. They make people disappear.
Do you want to explain, for those that haven't read the book yet, what a Kelpie is?
So a Kelpie is a shapeshifter. It dwells in rivers and lakes, and it comes on land and takes the form of a beautiful horse. And it lures people onto its back, mostly children, I think. And also it can take multiple children on its back because its back just expands to get bigger. And then it takes them into the lake and it drowns them. But sometimes it doesn't just drown them, sometimes it eats them as well. But it doesn't eat all of them because it doesn't eat the liver, so the liver washes up on the shore, and that's how you know that a Kelpie's taken it. And I just love that dark, scary kind of thing. And, of course it was probably invented to keep children away from rivers and lakes and things so they didn't drown, but I love that how a lot of those kind of stories probably come from quite practical places.
I think I'll just go back to that point because at the beginning, when I thought about this book, I was using the term in my head of folklore and myth, and that's not correct. Do you want to explain the different? What is folklore?
I think of folklore as being stories that kind of grow up from communities, from small communities, and they're stories that are passed down, often through generations. It was interesting hearing Nick talk about, the stories that sometimes don't go outside whānau or hapu. And actually, when I was on that trip in Scotland, I went to the Orkney Islands because I'd written the Selkie book. And that's kind of the origin place of the Selkie story. And because I was talking about it at the Edinburgh Festival, I thought it would be cool to go to Orkney and see where it's from. And I met this guy who works at the museum. His name's Tom Muir, and he wrote the collected Orkney folk tales. He very generously gave me some time. I asked him some questions. But one thing that he said was really interesting is that a lot of those stories are dying out because the older people don't want to tell them to people outside their families, but the younger generation aren't interested in them and hearing them, and so they're just kind of dying with the people. So, you've had there were people, English people who'd come and try and gather the stories and everything, put them in a book. So that I feel like that's folklore. They come from that kind of more intimate kind of place, whereas myth to me feels like something that's, across the whole of a culture, and maybe they're more like the hero's journey kind of things, or
often creation things.
Or made to explain, larger phenomena rather than just to keep a kid from falling in the lake. Yeah. Mike, can I tell you my favourite one?
Sure. Yes, please.
So yesterday I went to speak to Seddon Primary, and Ward Primary came to visit us around there. I went to Marlborough Girls, and I just shared some of my favourite ones. And the one I like best is the bog hag. And I showed kind of a picture of it. And with the bog hag, she kind of lures you into the bog, and then she drowns you, and then she steals your skin and she wears it like a suit. I just love that. There's the famous one called Jenny Greenteeth. And there seems to be a lot of interest in those kinds of stories now. When I first read about Jenny Greenteeth, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I love it. Next minute, of course, there's a book coming out soon called Greenteeth, which is from the point of view of Jenny Greenteeth. But a version of her has actually made its way into my next novel.
Oh, marvellous. Yeah. I read it, I can't remember the book, but it was all based on the Green Man, and that was that same spooky, boy goes missing.
Right.
Rosy. It's fantastic, if I ever remember what it was.
Well, it was really great talking to Tom Muir, actually, because he told me about this one night where he was in his house. He lived near the sea, and he just heard this woman crying outside, and he was quite alarmed, and he went out to help her, and he ended up wandering down the road, and he could just hear this crying woman down to the beach, and it was a seal. He said that was the moment where he realised where these stories came from, and they believed that selkies were the spirits of drowned people. I think there's probably a whole lot of different beliefs about it, but I just love that kind of melancholy thing.
I think
stories.
The Secrets of Rowan and Ish is one of my favourite movies.
Oh yeah, and the song of
world.
the song of the Selkie as well, which is an Irish animated Selkie tale. I cried my eyes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the poem that I read about the Selkies, I forgot his name already.
Robin Robertson.
Yes.
Yeah, at Roan
Yes,
Head.
it's amazing.
At Roan Head. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if we have it 2 hours, we could have
Yeah,
had
could have played the video.
Yeah, yes, that's right. It's amazing. Anyway, so we've got this Kelpie that has moved to the South Island,
Yeah.
but not conventionally. Passed through, perhaps, a misty thin bit in the world, that sort of thing. I think there's a...
I like to think he's kind of dived down into one lake in Scotland and come up in the...
Yeah.
He's followed the grandmother to Scotland. Yeah.
So there's a family of women living on the shores of the lake almost, with their horse trekking business, a completely female household because the men have gone missing. Yeah. So would you like to tell us about them? Because each one of these women is important to the story and interesting.
Yeah. So, essentially this is what you'd call a fantasy novel, I suppose, but it's low fantasy, so it's not an entirely made-up world. And I'm really drawn to stories that are set in real places with real people, with real families, real problems. And often with children's books, the parents are just kind of blah, 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 kind of on the periphery, or they get dispatched somehow, There's a lot of orphans in children's books. But I really like the idea of families being involved in the stories, the same with Red Rocks. And actually Margaret Mahy was very big on that kind of thing as well. I love the family dynamics in her books. So Ella's 13. Her father disappeared 6 years ago. And not long after that, the foal Magpie was born, who turns, is her pony, who's her best friend. And she has a little sister called Fiona, and her mother Morag is just this really stoic kind of, she's just got to get on with life. She's lost her husband. She believes her husband is dead, and she is just getting on with running this business and raising her 2 children, and also her mother Grizzly lives with them, and she has cancer. She has terminal cancer. So, I felt a lot of empathy for Morag. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of women who read it, find it satisfying beyond maybe if it was just for children, I think. And then we've got Grizzly, who came from Scotland. Halfway through the book, we learn why she came. And she's just this really cool, kind of staunch. She is a word hoard, so she loves collecting words, and she keeps a little notebook with all these different words in it. She calls it her grimoire, which is another name for a book of spells. And she teaches those words to Ella. So the Grimmelings is one of those words. It means the first and last glimmers of light in the day, which is an old Orkney word. And she leaves little scraps of paper with words written on them for Ella to find. So it might be next to her toothbrush or next to her porridge bowl or in her boot or in her jacket pocket. And then she challenges Ella to use the word in a sentence somehow. I really love Grizzly. And I think more than any book that I've read, these characters became that I've written, these characters just became so real to me. I was, it's a cliche, but I was actually really sad when I finished the book and I had to say goodbye to them. They just, I guess maybe there's a lot of me in them, maybe there's a lot of my family as well in some ways.
So where did the idea come from about the words?
About
the words, the word collecting and the words themselves, because they're beautiful words.
They are,
and
yeah.
it's fun. I mean, each chapter is what do you call it? Prefaced, whatever.
Yeah. So each chapter starts with one of Grizzly's scraps of paper, and it's got a word and a definition on it. So this one's Grimmelings, the first and last glimmers of light in the day, and then each word appears in the chapter somehow. And I love the idea that children and adults will be learning new words and putting them in context. I mean, they're not all unusual words. Some of them are just grown-up words, like susurration and things like that. So it came from the wonderful British writer Robert Macfarlane. I'm sure lots of you know. He used to do a word of the day on Twitter and Instagram. And every day he would post a word with a photo, and one of them was Grimmelings, and I just really loved that word because Grimmelings kind of they sound like little magical creatures that live under the hedge or something. Watch out for the Grimmelings! I'm not quite. I can't quite. And so anyway, I got his book Landmarks, which is where he'd taken the books from, and I just found myself just finding these words and the definitions, and then I just loved the idea. Actually, the very first chapter draft that I wrote, which didn't kind of make it in, was the idea of Grizzly and her words and teaching the words to Ella. There's some.
So why didn't it make it in? What made you leave it?
Oh, that was just like the very beginning of when I was experimenting, and the voice was all wrong, and it was just not. It just wasn't right. But I mean, the sentiment and the essence of it made it in, just not that particular scene that I wrote. But some of my favourite ones are the different words for icicles, and there's a big freeze and. Ella and her sister are feeding the horses in the stables, and there's all these icicles around, and they just kind of turn it into a chant. It's almost like a song. There's ickle, shuckle, clinkerbell, dagler, tankle, shockle, aquabob, snipe. And there are all these different words for icicles. It's a really wonderful book, and I've given Robert Macfarlane quite a lot of acknowledgement.
It's a really good rabbit hole to go down if you're looking for a rabbit hole. And there's quite a few of them in the library. So, can make sure that Landmarks is there. I'm sure it is. Okay, so we've got the book, we've got the words, we've got the horses, we've got these wonderful, I keep thinking of them as, I mean, they're not perceived well by the community because they're a group of women living together independently. That's probably part of it. They're quite into environmental things as well. They've had they've spoken out against the development. Yeah,
so originally I just had it that the community was just suspicious of them because of these men folk that go missing or drown, as a grandfather does. And I sort of wanted them to be kind of outcasts. I was thinking about Shirley Jackson's We've Always Lived in the Castle, how they're kind of, shunned by the community. And actually, I sent my second draft of the book to Elizabeth Knox, who very kindly offered to read it. And she just said, it's not enough. It's like just having people be suspicious of them for that is not enough. And is there something else you can think of? And as is often the case when you write a book and someone just asks you a question, they don't need to come up with the answer for you. It just sparks the solution in your own brain. And I just thought, dairy platforms are a big thing that was happening in the Mackenzie Basin. Greenpeace did a whole campaign about it to try and stop them, kind of ruining the landscape. And so I just thought, Grizzly is an activist, and she's gone in really hard to try and stop a dairy platform going in and has succeeded. And so the community is really mad with her because of the loss of the jobs that would have been available from all of this. And so that seemed to be a much stronger, and coupled with you men folk keep going missing as well, you all witches or what?
Yes, and I quite like that. I like that sort of feel that there is a sense of magic, and especially with Grizzly, that there is that question in your mind. Has she holding some secret knowledge or spell or power? I mean, it's a great name to be called, well, Griselda for a start, and then Grizzly is excellent. And also how she leads those women in her family, really without physically leading them, just as an emotional leader of the family. And furthermore, who we haven't talked about much is Fiona, who seems to be by her side. So Fiona's often there beside Grizzly, isn't she? I sort of think there is another book you can have that, because Fiona can pick up that power and knowledge, I think. But anyway, that's what I think of for her. But the other thing that I think I'd like, shall we start with the book first before I go off on a tangent? And you can introduce people to the story and how it happens. We'll talk a little bit about fantasy.
Do you want me to do the reading?
Yeah, do you want to do it now or later?
Yeah, let's do it now.
Let's do it now.
So I'm going to read you the first chapter, which is very short, but it gives a good sense of the central problem, I suppose, in the atmosphere as well. So it starts off with Grimmelings, the first and last glimmers of light in the day. The same evening Josh Underhill went missing, the black horse appeared on the hill above the house. It was Ella's favourite time of day when magic could happen, the sky a deep indigo, bleeding to pink at the horizon, and the last of the mauve light draining from the land, the Grimmelings. As she stood upstairs at her bedroom window, Ella could just make out her piebald pony Magpie and the other horses moving around the paddock contentedly. She opened the window and leaned out. "Maggie!" An answering whinny from Magpie carried on the breeze and settled inside her like a promise. Tomorrow they would ride. The first star hung bright and low over the horizon. Ella took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp air. She should make a wish, but what would it be? Nothing so big as asking for her father back, or for her Grizzly not to die. That was the same wish she made nearly every night when she glimpsed Venus in the sky. Something simpler. A friend. She'd like a friend for the school holidays, so she didn't have to be alone. Beyond the paddock, a chattering disturbance erupted in the sky. A cloud of birds reeled in the air, darkened shapes barely visible against the coming night, making it seem alive, a pulsing shadow. She couldn't tell from here what kind of birds they were, but she'd never seen a flock behave like that before. Another movement caught her eye. Outlined against the light on the lower slopes of the Ben, the great hill that overlooked the property, another horse, not one of their own. It moved restlessly back and forth, then stopped. It was just a shape, really, but she sensed it, a dark horse with power in its muscles, half unlocking a memory that stayed just out of reach. The bird cloud hovered above as if waiting, holding its breath. The dull ache that had been in her lower belly all day flared, and she heard her own voice in her head. "You're cursed, Josh Underhill." Ella jerked back from the window. She didn't know where the horse had come from or who it belonged to, but she got the distinct feeling it had been watching the house, watching her. She closed the curtains, shutting it out. As she came down the stairs, her mother's phone rang. "Hello?" Her mother flicked a tea towel over her shoulder. "Oh, Raywin, hi, what's up?" Her voice was stiff. The locals never rang Morag for a chat, or for anything friendly, really. "No, I haven't seen him. I'll ask them." She took the phone from her ear. "Girls, did you see Josh Underhill after school at all?" Ella and her little sister Fiona looked at each other. Yes, he was on the bus. What they didn't say was that they'd been glad to get off it, away from Josh and his honking voice. He tried to trip Fiona as they walked down the aisle, even though she was only half his size. "Get lost, dafty," Ella had called back to him, channeling Grizzly. Josh had grinned at her with a puzzled look, so she tried again. "Go jump in the lake." "What you going to do?" Josh sneered. "Put a curse on me? Get your gran to do it, or your mum? My dad says you're a house of witches and you can't pay your rent." He nudged the kid next to him, who wriggled away and refused to look at anyone. "Yes," said Ella, turning as she followed Fiona off the bus. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." She pointed at him. "You're cursed, Josh Underhill. Better watch out." She felt uneasy at the memory. "Did you see him after that, maybe?" asked Morag. "No, why?" said Fiona. Morag held up one finger. "Wait," and went back to Raywin. "No, they didn't see him after the bus. What does Susan think happened to him? Does he have any friends he might have gone to see?" Yes, of course you have. I'm so sorry. Let us know what we can do. She hung up. What is it? Asked Ella, but she knew. You're cursed. Josh has gone missing. They're sending out a search party. And just like that, a shiver of darkness descended on the basin.
It's amazingly atmospheric, and it is so much within the genre of all those amazing children's fantasy scary books. And I know that those books have also been part of your life and informing you as... Do you want to tell me about some of those, the books
that made me, the books that built me?
The books that made you, yeah, the books that made Rachael.
Well, one of the things that I thought about when I had the idea was, this is my chance to marry my two favourite childhood genres, which was fantasy and pony novels. It was funny, I found some old school reports recently from when I was at primary, and for reading it was like, Rachel's a very good reader, but she needs to widen her interests. And I was thinking, well, there was the Pauline Thompsons, there was Patricia Leach, there was Ruby Ferguson, there was K.M. Payton, there was, basically I read a lot of pony novels. And then actually Patricia Leach was my favourite one. Did anyone read the Ginny of Finmore books when they were a kid? So Ginny lives with her family on the edge of the Scottish moors in the Highlands, and she has a pony called Shanty, who's an Arab, but she's got red hair and she's really wild, and she has bad temper, and she's always getting into trouble. And she's an artist. She draws horses all the time. She paints them and she sells them in the local village. But there's this kind of undercurrent of the sort of mysticism there as well. And so, yeah, I went back and read a couple of her books, and I was like, actually, I can see that, this was very foundational for me for my love of things like Wuthering Heights and Tessa the D'Urbervilles and things like that. But then I also read some fantasy novels, the Narnia books. I absolutely loved them. But probably the most formative writer I read was Susan Cooper, who wrote the Dark is Rising books. Everybody read those? Yeah, lots of people. And people who, when you mention it, people go, oh!
Yeah.
They were amazing. So I read them when I was 12 years old. I got sent away to Hastings to go to the Rudolf Steiner School. And my family was in Auckland, long story, and I wasn't that happy. And one of the things I did was there was a horse that I got to ride, so that kind of helped. But I also spent a lot of time going to the library and getting books out, and I discovered this series. And I swear that Susan Cooper's books have shaped the whole way I see the world. And when I was 21, I went to Cornwall because Susan Cooper had set her book there. I always wanted to go to Wales. I actually didn't get to Wales until just a few years ago, but when I was there, I was driving around listening to the Grey King. Just her combination of, again, like real family stories, but this deep sense of things under the surface, the magic that's under the surface, kind of deep time. And yes, there's the dark and there's the light, but they're not black and white. And there's in between them, there's the wild magic, which has no allegiance to either the dark or the light. And I just loved that idea of the wild magic. And I think I've just grown up just seeing the wild magic everywhere. I love being out in the landscape. The Grimmelings is my favourite time of day. I always try and go for walks at that time, and there's just something when you, some people call it kind of peripheral magic, where there's books where there's things going on, but there's something just out of sight. And I feel like her books have kind of made my life better in that way, and then I just kind of move through the world in this slightly dreamy, ethereal way because of her, probably. But one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me is that I wrote to Susan Cooper and I invited her to Word to give the Margaret Mahy Memorial Lecture.
Wow.
And she wrote back saying, thank you so much for the invitation. Margaret was a really good friend of mine. Here's something I wrote about her when she died. I've been to New Zealand, I loved it, but I'm just too old and I can't make the trip. And then I very cheekily asked her if I could send her my book, which was Red Rocks at the time, and she wrote back saying very nice things about it. And then when the Grimmelings, and she, I'd mentioned that I was trying to write this other book, and she said, why don't you send that one to me as well? So I did. When the Grimmelings came out, I sent it to her. I mean, her address is just on her website if anybody wants to write to her.
Wow.
And a few weeks later, I got an email from her, and I just cried because she said the most wonderful things about it. And at the back of the book, I actually acknowledge her. I just say that I'm hugely influenced by her, but also there's a scene at the end, which kind of mirrors one of the scenes in Silver on the Tree, the last book in the Darkest Rising series. And I kind of mentioned that I'd had this image in my head for a long time, that I believed it to be my own. And when I reread the Silver on the Tree, it was in there.
You realised it was from you.
And she came back saying, it's all, it's just think of Tolkien's Cauldron of Story, and thinking of story as being this long corridor that has all these different echoes, and we're all coming from the same place. And it was just really wonderful because she was taught by Tolkien as well. So, there's...
It's a nice line to be part of.
Well, it's just this incredible synergy.
Corridor.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Tolkien, she said that she could never... she didn't learn anything from him because he mumbled and she could never understand what he was saying in his lectures. But she's been incredibly generous to me, and she wrote to her American publisher to recommend that they publish me as well. But that was only like 3 days ago, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Congratulations, that's fantastic.
But so sorry, gone off on a Susan Cooper tangent, but talk about fangirl.
Yeah, and it's a very good tangent. I'd just say that I didn't ever read Susan Cooper because I think they probably came out after I was a younger child at the library. But and I'd been talking about it with my daughter that I'd missed that reading, and the BBC have done a really excellent dramatisation of the first book, that if anybody's interested.
Of The Darkest Rising, yeah.
Yes, of The Darkest Rising. It's really spooky though.
Which Robert McFarlane adapted.
That's spooky.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually if you're interested in Robert McFarlane and Susan Cooper, there's an amazing podcast called Backlisted, and it has Robert McFarlane on it talking about The Darkest Rising. It's really great.
All right, Backlisted.
Backlisted, yeah.
Okay, it's cool. I'm just off. No. Okay, so we're talking about English writers here, and we're talking about a Celtic folklore, but we're putting it in New Zealand. You and I, as Pākehā here, putting stories of our past there. How well does that sit? Well, obviously you've chosen to do that. How do you, in your head, I said to you before, is a Kelpie a Taniwha? And you said no.
Yeah, I said an emphatic no, yeah.
Yes.
So I thought about this really hard because if you're going to bring a creature and put it in the lake, what do you do if there's already a creature in the lake?
Yeah.
So, and with Red Rocks, I glossed over it a bit. I didn't really think about it too much. And since then, I've got an origin story in my head, which is that some of the sealers that came out had wives, and maybe one of them was a Selkie, and she escaped into the waters. Yeah. But I was very careful about the fact that the Kelpie has been brought here by Grizzly. It's followed her here. There's a whole origin story about the Kelpie and Grizzly. It does not belong here, and it's up to the family to get rid of it. Yeah. And I'm really conscious of the fact that sometimes books that are set here, they just kind of ignore the fact that there are Māori stories here, or there were people here before, and I just did not want to do that. I wanted to acknowledge the fact that here's this creature, but there are already stories here. And actually reading Nick's book, Uprising, I read it at a really crucial time, and I didn't actually realise how much of an influence it had had on me until a bit later. But hearing about those stories in the landscape of the South Island, I think really influenced how I looked at the landscape and how I dealt with it in the book as well. Does that kind of answer your question?
And also that the fact that they are women. I mean, and I was reading something that said often in folklore it is young women who survive to break the curse. That's often something that happens, and that definitely happens in this.
Is it the young one? Yeah. So another really interesting thing that happened to me when I was writing this book is I wrote the first draft, and I often think of first drafts as being exploratory drafts where you get to know your characters, and then when you get to the end of it, you know exactly what you need to do to go back and to deepen the stories and the character. And I read, just as I was coming to the end of the first draft, I read The Owl Service by Alan Garner. Has anybody read that? And that had the most profound shift and effect on my story, which is the idea. So in The Owl Service, it visits the Welsh myth of Blodwyth, who's was made for a nobleman or whatever he was, and she was made out of flowers, and then she has an affair with somebody who then, it's a love triangle basically, and she's punished by being turned into an owl. And these three children, who in the TV series are played by 24-year-olds, just saying, they kind of play out this triangle, and then it turns out that one of the boys' mothers was also part of that triangle, and you just get the sense that in this valley, the story just keeps playing out again and again and again. And you kind of think that maybe with this book, the story's broken. But interestingly, in the TV series, which Alan Garner wrote, the very last shot is these three children playing on the riverbank, and you just kind of get the sense, oh shit, it's going to happen again. Yeah. But I really liked the idea of this idea of these curses, these stories playing out over generations and generations, and it became a really good metaphor, I think, for generational trauma, which is something that I think that fantasy can do really well. And so there was a character who is in this book that wasn't in the first draft. Oh. And anyone who's read it just doesn't believe me, because that person is such an integral part of the story. But he wasn't even in the first draft. So I've given his gender away now. Yes, that person wasn't in the story, but is. So I love that reading can do that. It's not like, oh, I'm going to steal that idea and put it in my book. It's more that the idea of a book gives me another idea.
Right. I just need you to tell me, you can write it on a piece of paper and put it in my shoe if you like, Katie. Yes, I'm guessing is right. Phew, I got it. Yeah. So that's a really interesting view of it, and I think one of the really great symbols for me, and it was the rowan tree. So a rowan tree planted at your gate protects you from the bad spirits, basically, doesn't it? From
the bad.
Yeah.
The bad witches or the witchcraft.
Yes, and indeed they have a rowan tree that Grizzly had planted at the gate. Yeah, so
I can't remember how it came up, but I thought, Grizzly plants a rowan tree. And then I thought, do we have rowan trees in New Zealand? And I Googled it, and it turned out that rowan trees, or rowan, is a pest in the Mackenzie Basin.
Yeah.
And my book was set in the Mackenzie Basin. It was this weird kind of serendipity.
Yeah.
The birds carry the berries all over the place, and they spring up all these places. Yeah. So there's an eradication program to get rid of these rowan trees. And I loved that Grizzly, who's this environmentalist, she's brought this thing from home. I mean, she probably didn't bring the actual thing from home, but with all good intentions, I want to, I've got this new place, I want to bring this, and it's just completely backfired and gone all over the landscape. She can't help bringing all the bad stuff, with all good intentions.
It's an interesting sort of metaphor for colonisation.
Exactly. But but even to the last, she still holds on to her rowan tree. She's really stubborn about it, and then in the end, she realises that it's got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's really, because I didn't know about rowan trees I knew about lupins, but not about rowan trees. But so, just let me pick up my book. I put it down in great excitement. I wanted just a moment to talk about the horses. And probably for me, this is the hardest bit to understand because I was one of those children that didn't really like horse books. My sister had horse books. I remember some of those, but I wasn't really a horsey. And I said to you earlier, I laughed when I saw the comment in one of your interviews that horse books are a gateway to romance fiction for young girls. And I thought that was really funny, and I'd like to just talk about your personal experience with the writing, because it has been quite an influence, and coming back to it as an adult.
Yeah, so I was a very horsey girl. I used to nag my parents to, if we drove past a horse when we were going, I'd make them stop so I could get out and pat it. I went horse riding when I was 4 or 5 years old, and they were my people, horses. I just always felt really comfortable around them. And I used to stay with my grandparents in the Bay of Plenty, or Hiwa Harbour they lived on, and there was like an estuary and a spit and an ocean beach, and there were a couple of horses that all of the kids who came to stay would ride. I have no idea who owned them, but the bridles would just get passed around between the kids, and whoever got there first got to ride them. But we used to race them. We used to gallop them bareback on the beach. This is when I was like 10 years old. And, I had one of those grandmothers who was just like, here's your breakfast, off you go, come back for lunch, come back for dinner. And just this incredible sense of freedom that I associate with going really fast on a horse. But when I talked about the romance thing, it is like getting to know a horse is a bit like a romance. Like if a horse, actually Jane Smiley talks about this. She got a horse, and within a couple of days when she went to see it, the horse nickered at her and came running, and she it likes me. Yeah. Like you do, like when a horse pays attention to you, you feel really flattered. Yeah. And yeah, so there is this. I mean, that wasn't my theory. It was someone else's. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, just the idea that they are kind of maybe stand-ins for a kind of a romantic interest, just in the way that you pine for them. You're devastated if it.
And it gets very complicated in this novel, really.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I was obviously a big
horsey
horse girl. Yeah.
So it's not long before I have to ask people if they would like to ask you some questions. I've got one more. Why were you in the Outer Hebrides? What are you planning? What are you thinking? Where do you go to from Selkies to Kelpies to?
So I went to the Outer Hebrides a few months ago because my next novel's set on an island. It's a fictional island. And a couple of years ago, I saw a film called The Road Dance. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's set on the island of Lewis. And I just went, that's my island. That's what I want it to look like. That's what I want the cottages to look like. That's what I want the clothes to look like. And I kind of became obsessed with this idea of going to the Outer Hebrides. And so, yeah, I did finally go. I wanted a place that had moors and bogs.
Ooh, with green-teethed women.
A little bit of child sacrifice. Folk horror. People call my books Horse Girl Folk Horror, which is like, yes!
That's fantastic.
You've got me. So yeah, my next book is another horse-based fantasy, but it's set on an island. And I went there because I was really interested in how a community lives when they're isolated like that. I'm obviously not isolated now. But I went to St Kilda, which is 40 miles west of the Western Islands, which was one of the best days of my life. And that really was isolated. And so just learning about... So that the St Kilda was occupied for thousands of years until 1930, when life got too hard and they were evacuated. But the reason life got too hard was because they were now reliant on boats. So when they were self-sufficient, they were fine, maybe a little inbred, but they were fine. And then they became reliant on the outside world, but with, subsequent world wars and things started drying up, they were dying. And I'm really doing a deep dive into the history of that place.
Cool.
And so that's going to make its way into my novel as well. I like to write really light stories for children.
Yeah. It isn't Katie Morag, is it? Do you know who Katie Morag is?
No.
Oh, Katie Morag is a little girl in picture books who lives on a Scottish island.
Oh.
But it's all very sweet.
Oh, yeah, no, mine's not sweet.
She has nice grannies who, yes. So that is marvellous. Well, that's really exciting. So how's the progress?
It's not going quite as fast as it should be, but I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
So when will we see it?
It's supposed to be published next year.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's very exciting for us that we don't have to wait too long. Now it's your opportunity to ask any questions. There are some ladies, people, human beings with microphones, which I'd ask you to use because people behind you can't hear otherwise. Has anybody got a question that they'd like to ask Rachel? Yes.
With children's literature, how scary is too scary?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've just recently reread, and actually went on Backlisted and talked about Marianne Dreams by Catherine Storr, which was the most terrifying children's book ever written, because it's not like monsters and blood and gore and everything. It's just this really deep psychological horror, which is for children of 8 and over. But Catherine Storr says really interesting things about the role of fear in children's books, which I've kind of elaborated on in my mind, I think, which is, reading scary stories actually builds resilience in a child, because they're in this kind of, this scary world that they can put down at any time. But also they can see the tools that children use to get over these scary circumstances. It creates empathy because they feel empathetic with the child that's in terror. And kids love scary stories, honestly. Like, the most popular thing when I go and talk to kids is when I tell them about the bog hag. Like, they absolutely love it, because it's a kind of they get a visceral response to it. It makes their spines tingle and everything. I think the really important thing, though, especially for younger children, is that they do overcome it, that books end on a hopeful note. I don't know of any successful children's books where everybody dies at the end and it's all bleak. I guess it's letting children know that things can get really dark and they can get really hard, but they can actually be resolved as well. I'm a big lover of. Put it this way. Somebody said that Marianne Dreams completely traumatised them, but the only people I know who've said that are really stable people. So actually, it might have traumatised you at the time, you think, but it probably actually built you tools for dealing with life. People love. You don't believe me, do you? That's completely true. But I would love it because sometimes I talk about Marianne Dreams with people. It was turned into a TV series in the 1970s, and it had these rocks with eyes. And sometimes you talk to people and you go, "Do you remember a show that had rocks with eyes?" And they go, "No." And you just see this look come over their face, and they're like, "Oh my God, yes, I do remember that," because the rocks with eyes have been with them their whole lives. They just didn't know. And my great dream is that when people are 50, they go, "Do you remember that book, the one with the horse?"
Yeah.
So it's a really good way to make a memorable story is to...
I'm probably going to get this quotation wrong, and Neil Gaiman didn't think of it, he used somebody else's words, that the importance of fairy tales is not to teach children that dragons exist, but to teach them that they can beat them.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly, yeah.
Has anybody else got a...
Yeah.
That was
and
a
actually,
bad paraphrase.
I mean, just quickly, Marianne Dreams, like, it's got these rocks with eyes and they're just all evil. Like, she actually wanted to show children that evil exists. But the evil exists, you can't get rid of the evil, but what you can do is get away from it if you're lucky. What age group? So I would say 10 plus. Yeah. I mean, I don't like putting age bands on things because I would like everyone to read this book. And it's quite complex in its language and ideas, but I'm sure that some really mature younger readers would enjoy it as well. But, if a friend said to me, can I read it to my 5-year-old? I think it was you, Nick. I was like, no, do not read it to your 5-year-old. Yeah.
Can you talk about the symbolism of magpies?
Ooh, magpies. So I have a book called Magpie Hall, and so quite clearly I love magpies. I think the reason I use magpies is because they're the closest thing we've got to crows here. Although apparently there are rooks and things in the North Island, but that's the main reason I use them. But magpies are, the thing is with the traditional symbolism of magpies come from Europe, and the magpies are completely different there. So for me, they're just kind of harbingers. They kind of cause mischief. They're curious. They kind of chase things away. They ride on sheep's backs. I don't know. They just have a lot of personality. So I don't really ever go into something thinking about what the symbolism of it is. But readers are welcome to find that in there. But I just really like magpies. In Magpie Hall, they're quite sinister as well. They kind of leer at people, and actually they cause quite a lot of harm in Magpie Hall as well. So when Catherine Chidgey's Axeman's Carnival came out, which I loved, I was so jealous that her book was narrated by a magpie, and I hadn't thought of that myself.
Damn.
Because the Grimmelings narrated by a magpie, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
But it was too, damn it.
Tanya Miller.
Kia ora, Rachel, and thank you, Jane. What an awesome and inspiring talk. I'm just wondering why your publisher has decided to publish The Grimmelings as a children's book. There seems to be a lot of children's characters in adults' books who are centering like the protagonist around being a child now in adults' books, and maybe it would have, I don't know, maybe you would have sold more books if it was published as an adult book.
Oh, damn. No, it is a children. It's a book that I want children to read. I mean, if you market it as an adult book, children aren't going to read it. And I want this to be a book that everyone wants to read. There's an author called S.F. Said who talks about children's books not being for children. They're just books that are for everyone. That is just an audience that includes children. And I've been revisiting a lot of old children's books. I've got kind of a semi-regular column in the spin-off. And I really recommend going back to some of your childhood reading and rereading, because it's just been the most wonderful experience. You find new things in them, getting in touch with your younger self. So, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's partly because there's this idea that children's books are somehow inferior to adult books, and I don't believe that at all. And I mean, I wrote a whole column in the spin-off about why I'm no longer writing novels for adults. So if you go and read that, you'll find probably the answer to your question. Yeah.
And I would say on that, as a former children's librarian, that I think children's books have to be written so well to be enduring and powerful and a wonderful read.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that children are very, they just will put it aside if it's rubbish.
Yeah,
that's
right.
why it drives me nuts when people think it'll be easy to bash out a kid's book.
And it's a privilege to write a children's book because, has everyone read Catherine Rundle's Why You Should Read Children's Books Even Though You're So Old and Wise? It's really fantastic, but it talks about children's books being, all the ideas are distilled, it's literary vodka. And when children read a book, it gets into their marrow and their bones, and it accompanies them for their whole life. And I don't think that adult books necessarily do that. You might find one or two, but I think you've got so much power as a children's writer to do that for somebody. Yeah, and I love the idea of pushing my obsessions on little kids.
Yeah. And I'd have to say that playing Betty Bow terrified my girls.
Oh, yeah, it's terrifying.
But they all have a copy.
Yeah.
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 We've talked briefly, excuse me, about this before, Rachel, but book festivals, literature festivals, what can they do which will help, I guess, writers for younger audiences? And I wonder if you'd talk about that, please.
Yeah, sure. I think that there is the sense of they're two separate things, and often at festivals, obviously not this one because I'm on a stage talking to a room full of adults, yes, is that, you've got your schools program and all the children's writers go there, and then the schools program finishes and all the children's writers leave, and then you've got the real program, And they'll have family days and things like that, but I think there's a sense that, a lot of the time people just don't even really think about it, that, children, so of course we'll put them in front of children. I love talking to kids and I want to do that. But also a lot of children's writers are really smart and they're writers and they craft stories. And also there's a lot of thematic crossovers between adult books and children's books. Imagine getting a historical novelist on with Tessa Duda, who's just written a historical YA, or Lauren Keenan, who writes about the history of Taranaki through time travel, and she's a historian, she knows her stuff. So, I'd like to see more kind of cross-pollination, I think, between children's authors and adult authors.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's somebody sprinting down.
Sorry, half a formed idea of a question, and I haven't read your books, and they sound super cool. I get it. I guess what I was thinking is that it sounds like your books are thematically linked, but what I've found with children's books and younger adult books is lots of them are, sequels and 3 and 4 and 5. Is that something that's maybe a commercial decision? Is that, is there a reason that your books aren't, part of a series, or you choose to have them standalone?
Yeah, series are often written really quickly so that they can get them out in time for that child not to age out. I would be terrible at writing a series because I wrote one, it was published in 2012, and the next one was published in 2024. So my readers are the people that were not even born in that first one. Series in a lot of ways are more commercial. Like if you go into somewhere like Whitcoulls or Paper Plus, you often see like all the series are lined up and everything. And it's, easy for parents. They know that little Millie liked that one, so they'll just buy the next one. The number of Andy Griffith's Treehouse books that I bought because my son was like, the new one's out, and he'd read it in an hour, and I'm like, oh, that was a waste of money. But no, I like doing standalone books because I feel like I can just put more into it. But having said that, I have got a series on the way. I've written the first one, and I've done
The Bog Witch Returns.
No, they're completely different. They're for a slightly younger audience. They're much shorter. There's kind of a need at the moment for, this is a very booky kids book. There's definitely a need for shorter books for that age group and also illustrated. But it's about a primary school girls punk rock band that solves mysteries. And it's an 11-year-old guitarist called Violet, who's got ADHD. And she's awesome. And I wrote the book really quickly because it's told in the first person, present tense, and Violet just took over my brain, and I just wrote it. Her band's called Violet and the Velvets. Cool. And that arose from going to my son's band quest competition when he was at primary school. He had a really cool bass player in his band called Lucci, this girl. And of the 70 or so kids that came across the stage, there was maybe 6 of them were girls who played instruments, and all of the rest were singers. And I just thought, why are the boys so confident at playing bass and drums and guitar, and why are there not more girls doing it? So I was a teenage bass player. And I just thought, well, that's kind of a microcosm right there of the music industry. And I just thought, I'm going to write a book where a girl who loves music turns up at an audition and all the boys are holding instruments and all the girls are holding microphones, and she says, no, we're going to form our own band. And they go, but we can't play our instruments. It's like, it doesn't matter. I'd been playing the bass guitar for 6 weeks when I had my first gig in a pub when I was 15. And yeah, you only need 3 chords to write a song. And so it's kind of that, it's that, just do it. It's like, just pick it up, just do it. Don't be scared, And so I just kind of, it's not like a hugely messagey book, but I guess I just wanted to give girls what I had when I was young, and also they solve mysteries, so it's completely irresistible, right? Yeah, so that's, the first one, I've finished the first one, it's coming out in probably May next year, and the next one will be 6 months after that, and then the next 2 after that, yeah.
It's very exciting. Now we're late.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry that I can't allow any more questions. Rachel, I have to say thank you. It's such a pleasure to hear you talking about your writing, and hopeful to see that quality of writing coming through. And it just fills me with happiness and joy as my grandchildren are coming up to that stage. And I can't wait. I often think with scary books, it's quite good if you do read to them, but maybe not when they're 5. Because you can sort of share that out. But then there is always that gloriously delicious thing of being too scared, even if you're 62, and putting the book down. Thank you so much. Rachel will now be stepping out for you. She's available to sign the books.
Well, can I just say one thing about Red Rocks, is that it's being turned into a TV series.
It's exciting.
So last week I went and visited the set, which was on the south coast of Wellington, and yeah, it's really exciting. And so if children like to watch books come to life on TV, it's going to be out next year. Yeah,
It's very exciting. Congrats. What a lot of exciting things you've got going on.
I'd say you leave your job,
And things happen.
and then things just happen apparently. But yeah,
Well, ngā mihi nui. Thank you so much.
thank you so much. Thank you.